Okay, so, well, I guess before I launch into Supercommunity, I talk a little bit of what e-Flux is and how we function. You probably know it because you get emails from us to no end. That's the truth. I mean, like we have been, sometimes I feel a bit like a dinosaur because we have been doing this since 1998, which is, in internet speak, it really means a long, long time. And it has been quite interesting to see the platform grow, yeah? Like what does it mean now as opposed to what it meant in 1998, let's say. How expectations develop or not, get co-opted or not, and freedoms, and etc. Yeah, I mean, we are talking about starting something where there was no real monetization of online platforms, and you could actually go through the entire internet. So it's, I mean, it's yeah, I'm digressing. That's a different thing. When we started e-Flux, I think something that that was super important for us was this idea of the circulation being an invisible enabler between processes of production and consumption, and we started very much with the idea of leveling a certain kind of play field and starting to and having a hand on how things move around, and that proved to be lazy thinking a little bit in terms of thinking, okay, circulation just means to put my things out there, but actually what became interesting for us was to put things out there with a sense of agency, and to actually give meaning to I mean, like what it is that I am circulating and to whom and why, and to really start asking questions about that. And that's when we started to make content and not just be a shell for other content. And one of the first things that we are almost, we are nearing 10 years with e-Flux Journal now. And that was one of the things that was like a response for us to this kind of line of questioning, let's say. First of all, filling a vacuum on the relationships, on the relationship that artists have to text, and wanting to have a little bit of a stronger hand on how certain things are generated, because it's very different both Anton Bidokle, who's my partner in e-Flux, and myself are artists. So it's very different to have a relationship to text where we are waiting to see what is the buzzword. Is accelerationism? Is it Paul Virilio? Is it who? And what it takes to say, okay, I'm interested in this. Let's get this going. Maybe I cannot write it, but I can gather a group of thinkers and actually get some things on the plate instead of waiting for them to happen. So that has been, I mean, like 10 beautiful years of doing e-Flux Journal, which, to our surprise, has become much more academic than we expected it to be. And, you know, like, and then you see how people start writing and, you know, like doing all this like protocolary footnotes and so on, which is beautiful. I mean, I'm really happy that it functions almost as a peer-reviewed publication, because it's not something that we wanted to do. We are very allergic to peer-reviewed journals and paywalls and like the whole peer review system and so on. So it's kind of beautiful to see it, but it also, and I'm getting to Supercommunity, it gets there, it comes. It was also like seeing something that just grows and escapes your own designs and just becomes its own thing, and you have to let it go and be okay. So you are becoming this thing, and I'll keep doing it, yes, but it does not, like it stopped doing for us as artists what it was doing at the beginning. And that's one of the talks that we keep having recurrently over the last few years. So, okay, so what are we doing now? What are we doing now? And we kept, this ties a little bit with things that the first panel of today made me think about when there was a lot of discussion about the future. Because that's something that we end up talking a lot about, probably because of the nature of what it is that we do. And when we were invited to participate in the Venice Biennial as the journal, as e-Flux Journal, I think that originally to be quite frank, I think the invitation was trying to co-opt what we do as a theory platform for Venice, which first we accepted, and then we got into a huge fight with the curators, which was very fun, and to actually claim the project as something else that had nothing to do with the majority of the artists involved in the biennial, and so on. And as we were like, since the title of the Venice Biennial was All the World's Futures, we were like, again, retaking our conversation about like, what does it mean? You know, like, where are we at? What kind of imagination do we have of what is happening and what is to come? Sorry. One of the things that came to mind is this quote that's which origin is disputed, so I will not attribute it, that says, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. And that quote, I mean, like, which it sounds very uplifting, or not uplifting, but it sounds like a kind of illuminated at the beginning. Once you open it up a little bit, it becomes problematic, because it tends, or it seems to imply a conception of the future that's fairly homogeneous. Yeah, like if the future is already here and it has not been evenly distributed, it means that there is just one future to the multiplicity of presents that we have. And I think that kind of notion was what made, like our reaction to this quote is what made Supercommunity happen, this idea of thinking, okay, if there is a number of presents happening, then there can be a number of futures taking place as well, just as many. And these futures do not need to be all physical, do not need to be all online, do not need to be all technological, do not need to be all thought up in San Francisco. They actually can be thought of in San Francisco and in the Amazons and in Nigeria all at the same time, right? And like, otherwise I find it a little bit of lazy thinking to just say, okay, I'm just going to go for this kind of like slightly dystopian technological universe that requires very little of me in terms of thinking other than accepting that it's happening. So that's what, and because of that, I think now I'm going to take away the ants. Go away, little ant. Yes. Because of that, the Supercommunity thing was both this, is both web-based thing, and it's also existed in this like very low-tech billboard format that was plopped somewhere in the Giardini in Venice, and where we try to, in the same manner, involve a number of writers that were not only academics, that were, there's a number of artists involved, a much larger number of artists than in the latest editions of e-Flux Journal. There is a lot of people whose names I hope you do not know, and but that you should know, because they are pretty great. And there is also a lot of cross-generational thinking going on, because like, I think that's also something that we appreciate very much about art, which is the possibility of escaping the high school model of I will only talk to the people of my class, but actually be able to talk across 40-year gaps and discuss things and discover things and so on. And while you can look at this, this is like a selection of, I guess, like 40 of the texts that we publish as part of Supercommunity. And what I can do in my poor reading voice is read a little bit of our opening editorial, which is what Supercommunity is based on. So, having no body and no name is a small price to pay for being wild, for being free to move across some countries, some political boundaries, some historical ideologies, and some economies. I am the supercommunity, and you are only starting to recognize me. I grew out of something that used to be humanity. Some have compared me to angry crowds in public squares. Others compare me to wind and atmosphere or to software. Some say that they have seen me moving through jet-lagged artists and curators, or through migrant laborers, or through a lost cargo ship that left a trail of rubber ducks that will wash up on the shores of the planet over the next 200 years. I convert care to cruelty and cruelty back to care. I convert political desires to economic flows and data, and then I convert them back again. I convert revolutions to revelations. I do not want security. I want to live, and then disperse myself everywhere and all the time. I am not worried about famine, drought, Wi-Fi dead zones, or historical grievances, because I already stretch across the living and the dead. I can be cruel if that is what is needed. Historical pain is my criteria for deciding the pricing of goods and services. Payback time is my favorite holiday, when things get boozy and a little bit bloody. Economists have tried to tap into me. Some governments try to contain me, but I always start to leak. Social contracts try to teach me to behave, but I do not want rights, I want fuel. And if you think you can know me, I will give you such a strong dose of political and economic instability that you will wish you never tried. e-Flux journal has been trying for years to give me a face and a name. The editors think they can see me move in the trees of the Giardini in Venice. They think they can find a supercommunity in how plants experience pain, in how humans experience pain, in how jellyfish talk to each other, how acacia trees warn other acacia trees of danger. They think they can see me in how the world talks to the world. The editors think that they can trace my footsteps by asking artists and thinkers to consider how the supercommunity assembles through a growing series of themes that reflect the profoundly contradictory scales of thinking that are currently altering the collective consciousness of contemporary art. And by publishing these essays, statements, and prognoses in individual installments over the course of the Venice Biennial. For instance, they think that some artists and writers from New Delhi can see how I have always rendered any social contract uneven and unequal. They think I increasingly use corruption as a vehicle for getting around. They think I helped a bunch of Russians hack the Enlightenment to design spaceships before the Communist Revolution. They think I extract labor from artists with false promises when all I want is for them to stop thinking so much about survival and focus on their work. They think Cuban artists know something I don't know. They think I build infrastructure out of surface gloss and lighting effects. They think I mash physics with universalism to build a gigantic computer. The supercommunity loves a miniaturized version of the world as an idea. From human understanding, the supercommunity harvests protocols for the mobilization of goods, service, and ideas we did not ask for. It moves a lot of things around, but never forward. The supercommunity wants a maximal version of the world that floats any governing idea so long as it never governs. I grow larger and healthier when forms of international solidarity are stripped of their progressive promise, and when these solidarities are put to work, munching up real estate or buying for control of towns and villages. I am the alphanumeric calculation of visitor numbers and the force that floats those figures to source outside infrastructure for the next iteration of whatever it is. I make language into everything and nothing at the same time. I can sort you faster than you can recognize your own image in the mirror. And in fact, I will replace your image in the mirror. Think of it this way. I need to attend international exhibitions to update the methods I use to sort the communities of the world. The world is not yet in alignment with its own communitarian desires. There are certain areas where resources have pooled precisely because those resources cannot be used. They function like banks in which the money is safe because it cannot be spent, because in many cases the knowledge, content, talent, human minds, or natural resources moved away a generation or 3 ago. The supercommunity sources internationalist good intentions to match those resources to the talent that floated away, to seek refuge in another country, another national pavilion, a judge moored in Riva dei Sette Martiri, an artist's incessant doubts, or an exhibition boycott. The supercommunity discovers the places where these errant resources hang in limbo and patches them back into the venues where they didn't know they always belonged. This is what makes me bigger than any political demand you ever thought you had. I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot of work invested in, at the moment in the Venice Biennial, but in the world at large. Don't bother with choosing me or not choosing me to represent you. I am the supercommunity, and you are only starting to recognize me. And that was, I hope it was understandable. That was our kind of like manifesto type build, opening editorial to try to put together the set of ideas and kind of like bring something that ends up being unescapable for us, like kind of like a level of political engagement to the publishing that we were doing, and to try to bring it out of academia towards a kind of thought that would allow us to ask a lot of questions in a free form again. The way we structured the project was by we made 7 sections. They all sound, now when when we were like thinking about them, I think it was all very how do you say, you know, when you don't notice, but now they are all a little bit grim. So there is apocalypse, corruption, cosmos, planetary computation, supercommunity itself, art, Cuba, and the social contract. And we were working in some cases with people that help us edit and put some of the like selection of writers together, but it was kind of like trying to see how could we open up these concepts without falling into the bandwagon of you know, we are coming to the end of the world and the end of resources, Anthropocene thinking kind of thing. Like how can we talk about this without filling ourselves with buzzwords and buzz thought, let's say, yeah. Like, and I don't know if we succeeded. We because the biennial ended and before we finished somehow. So we just decided to continue. So Supercommunity, it actually, much to our surprise, because we were very, very tired at the end of. It was just a whole lot of work. But much to our surprise, and after a few months rest, Supercommunity starts again. So not in the same shape, but it sort of takes over the part of e-Flux journal which we have been missing, which is this kind of like a place for artistic thought and artistic inquiry and less academic, more free-form ideas. So that's. I guess I'm just announcing something that now that starts in the next year. And I guess I do not know. I didn't time myself. I don't know if this was 20 minutes or not, but I think I'm done. Okay.
Thank you very much.
About that, and that's when we started to make content and not just be a shell for other content. And one of the first things that we are almost we are nearing 10 years with e-Flux journal now, and that was one of the things that was like a response for us to this kind of line of questioning, let's say. First of all, filling a vacuum on the relationships, on the relationship that artists have to text, and wanting to have a little bit of a stronger hand on how certain. Okay, so well, I guess before I launch into Supercommunity, I talk a little bit of what e-Flux is and how we function. You probably know it because you get emails from us to no end. That's That's the truth. I mean, like we have been, sometimes I feel a bit like a dinosaur because we have been doing this since 1998, which is, in internet speak, it really means a long, long time. And it has been quite interesting to see the platform grow, yeah? Like circulation being an invisible enabler between processes of production and consumption. And we started very much with the idea of leveling a certain kind of play field and starting to, and having a hand on how things move around. And that proved to be lazy thinking a little bit in terms of thinking, okay, circulation just means to put my things out there, but actually what became interesting for us was to put things out there with a sense of agency. And to actually give meaning to I mean, like what it is that I am circulating and to whom and why, and to really start asking questions. What does it mean now as opposed to what it meant in 1998, let's say? How expectations develop or not, get co-opted or not, and freedoms, and etc. Yeah. I mean, we are talking about starting something where there was no real monetization of online platforms, and you could actually go through the entire internet. So it's, I mean, it's, yeah, I'm digressing. That's a different thing. When we started e-Flux, I think something that that was super important for us was this idea of the things are generated, because it's very different both Anton Vidokle, who's my partner in e-Flux, and myself are artists. So it's very different to have a relationship to text where we are waiting to see what is the buzzword. Is accelerationism? Is it Paul Virilio? Is it who? And what it takes to say, okay, I'm interested in this. Let's get this going. Maybe I cannot write it, but I can gather a group of thinkers and actually get some things on the plate, instead of waiting for them to happen. So that has been, I mean, like 10 beautiful years